The sun was hanging low over the rolling fields of Madison County, Virginia, painting the grass with strokes of gold. From the porch of my farmhouse, I could still see the same view my father and grandfather had enjoyed. Acres of hickory trees, an old barn leaning slightly to the left, and a stretch of wild meadow that had been in our family for over a century. My name's Daniel Harris, 43 years old, born and raised in the same house my father built with his own two hands. Life hadn't always been easy. I worked construction, paid my way through college, then came back to the land because it felt like the only place that was truly mine. My dad used to say, "Daniel, dirt is the only thing they can't make more of. You hold on to land, and you hold on to freedom." Those words echoed through me that evening, sipping coffee, the dog at my feet, when the first sign of trouble arrived. A dust cloud. Out there, beyond the tree line on the far edge of my property, a convoy of trucks rattled along the old dirt road. White trucks, shiny, loud, with company logos stenciled on the side. Behind them came a yellow excavator and a bulldozer, their engines coughing smoke into the air. I squinted, leaning forward. My land ended right at Miller's Creek, and beyond it stretched woods that had gone untouched since before the Civil War. No one had business out there without crossing through my acreage first. Probably lost, I muttered, though something about the precision of their movements, the way men hopped out with clipboards and radios, said otherwise. By the next morning, the noise was impossible to ignore. Chainsaws howled. Trees groaned and toppled. My coffee cup rattled on the kitchen table with each distant crash. I drove down the dirt lane, dust kicking up behind my old Ford pickup, and found them. Hard hats, orange vests, trucks parked every which way, machinery chewing into the earth. And in the center of it all, her, Karen McMillan. If you've never met an HOA president, picture the most entitled person you know, then multiply that by 10. She stood there in a pressed blazer and pearl earrings, even in the middle of a construction site, barking orders like a general. I pulled up, slammed my truck door, and shouted over the machines. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" She turned, lips curled into a smirk. "And who might you be?" "This is my land," I said, pointing to the freshly torn ground. "All of it, from the fence post up by Highway 9 down to Miller's Creek. You're trespassing." Karen laughed. Not politely, not nervously. She laughed like she'd been waiting for me. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "This is community development property. The Madison Springs Homeowners Association has full jurisdiction here." "Community what?" I asked, my voice rising. "Madison Springs. A brand new luxury neighborhood," she said, sweeping her manicured hand across the horizon as if she owned it. "We're talking 101 custom-built homes, a clubhouse, tennis courts. This is the future, darling. And you, standing in the way. You're just a bitter man clinging to the past." I felt my jaw tighten. "Lady, I don't know who sold you that fairy tale, but this land belongs to me. Got the deed in a fireproof box in my living room if you'd like to see it." Her smile didn't fade. "Well, then maybe you should check again. Because according to our survey, this is all under the HOA's planned development." I stood there stunned, the sound of saws screaming in the background. Men moved around me like I wasn't even there, driving stakes into the dirt, spray painting neon lines, unloading stacks of lumber. "I'm telling you to stop," I growled, stepping closer. "Pack up your trucks and get off my property." Karen tilted her head, amusement flickering in her eyes. "Or what? You'll call the sheriff?" "Cute. I already spoke to the county board. They love what we're doing here. Jobs, growth, tax revenue. Your quaint little farm? It's a speed bump on progress." I could feel the heat rise in my chest, the same heat I'd felt when I was a kid, defending my younger brother from bullies at school. Except this bully had an army of bulldozers at her disposal. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, low and steady. Karen leaned in close, her perfume cloying in the dust-filled air. "Neither are we." That night, I barely slept. I sat at the kitchen table with papers spread out, property deeds, tax receipts, old maps my grandfather had kept. Every line, every measurement screamed the same truth. This was Harris land, always had been. But HOA Karen, with her smug smile and pearl earrings, wasn't bluffing. She had money, lawyers, and the county in her back pocket. By the end of the week, the construction site had exploded. Foundations poured, trucks hauling bricks and lumber in a steady stream. Neon green signs popped up along the road. Future site of Madison Springs. Luxury living from the $500s. It felt like a nightmare, each day erasing more of what had been ours for generations. I'd drive down to the creek and watch as they stripped away trees, cut into the earth, poured gravel roads. And every time, there she was, Karen, walking the site like a queen surveying her kingdom. But I wasn't going to roll over. On Friday, I marched straight into the county clerk's office, slapped my deed down on the counter so hard the clerk jumped. "This land is mine," I said. "Explain to me how a damn HOA is building on it." The clerk, a nervous young guy with glasses slipping down his nose, stammered, "Sir, I don't know what to tell you. Madison Springs submitted development permits months ago. Everything looked in order." "In order?" I barked. "Did anyone bother to check the owner's name?" He shuffled papers, then froze. His Adam's apple bobbed. "It, says Harris. Daniel Harris." "Exactly," I snapped. "That's me." He looked pale. Then something's wrong." I leaned across the counter. "You think?" By the time I walked out of that office, my blood was boiling. Karen hadn't just made a mistake. She'd lied, forged, bribed, whatever it took to ram her development through. She thought I'd be too small, too powerless to stop her. But she didn't know me. I spent the weekend pulling every string I had. Called my buddy Jake, who worked as a land surveyor. Dug through dusty boxes of county records, piecing together every legal scrap I could find. By Monday morning, I had a stack of evidence thick as a Bible. I drove back to the construction site, dust kicking up behind my tires. Workers stopped to watch as I stepped out, folder in hand. Karen spotted me from across the lot, rolled her eyes, and strutted over in her heels, as if the gravel parted just for her. "Back again," she sighed. I thrust the papers toward her. "Proof. Deeds, maps, surveys. This is my land, and you're trespassing." She glanced at the folder, then smirked. "Oh, Daniel, you sweet, naive man. Do you really think a piece of paper is going to stop progress?" Her words sliced through me. For a moment, I felt small against the machines, the workers, the walls of cinder block rising in the distance. But then I remembered my father's voice. "You hold on to land, and you hold on to freedom." I straightened, met her gaze, and said, "Lady, you've made the biggest mistake of your life. You built on land that isn't yours. And I'm going to make damn sure you pay for every brick, every nail, and every house you put up." Karen's smirk faltered for the first time. Just a flicker, but I saw it. And in that flicker, I knew one thing. The battle for my land had just begun. The next morning, I was woken by the sound of hammers echoing across the meadow. For a moment, I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to pretend it was a dream. But the clatter of machinery, the distant beep-beep of trucks reversing, it was all too real. I threw on jeans and boots, walked out to the porch with my dog Duke trailing close behind, and looked out across the horizon. What had once been an endless view of trees and fields was now scarred with the skeletons of half-built houses. Rows of wooden frames rose up like weeds, each one stabbing into the sky, blotting out the world I'd grown up with. My chest ached. It wasn't just land they were stealing. It was memories. The spot where my dad had taught me how to shoot a rifle. The hill where my mom used to spread out a picnic blanket every 4th of July. The clearing where my brother and I camped out as kids, staring at the stars. Now all of it was being swallowed by Karen's dream neighborhood. I climbed into my truck, the folder of evidence riding shotgun, and drove straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Tom Barlow was a thick-set man with a face like worn leather and a voice that always seemed to be on the edge of a sigh. We'd gone to school together years back, though life had taken us in different directions. He glanced up when I stormed into his office. "Morning, Daniel. You look like hell." "Because hell just built itself on my land," I shot back, slapping the folder down on his desk. "Karen McMillan and her HOA goons are building a whole damn neighborhood where they don't belong. That's trespassing." That's theft. Arrest them. Tom opened the folder, adjusting his glasses, flipping through the deeds and survey maps. His brow furrowed. Well, I'll be damned. This does say Harris. Always has. Exactly, I said, leaning forward. So get your deputies out there and shut this circus down. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling long and slow. I wish it were that simple. But they've got county permits, Daniel. Permits signed off by the board. Permits based on lies. I snapped. How does a damn HOA get away with this? Tom rubbed his temples. You're not wrong. But if I shut him down now, and it turns out the county approved it all proper, even if by mistake, I'll be knee-deep in lawsuits. The county attorney's already in Karen's pocket. You'll have to fight this in court. I felt the bottom drop out of me. Court? By the time that happens, they'll have built 50 houses. Tom gave me a look that was almost apologetic. I'm not saying you're out of luck, Daniel, but you're going to need more than deeds and maps. You need a lawyer who can tear their case apart piece by piece. I clenched my fists, teeth grinding. Fine, then I'll find one. That night, I called every lawyer within 100 miles. Some hung up before I finished explaining. Others listened, then politely declined. Too risky, too expensive, too many strings tied to the county board. By midnight, I sat in the dark kitchen with Duke curled at my feet, staring at the silent phone. I felt cornered, the way a man feels when wolves are circling. Then, out of desperation, I called an old college buddy, Mark Levine. He'd gone on to become a property rights attorney in Richmond. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he heard the quiver in my voice, he said, I'll be there tomorrow. Mark showed up in a black Tesla that looked wildly out of place bouncing down my dirt road. He stepped out in a sharp suit, loosened his tie, and gave me a grin. Same old Danny, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Except grayer. Same old Mark, I shot back. Except richer. We laughed, but my smile faded quickly as I led him out to the edge of the construction site. He stood there, hands on his hips, scanning the rows of houses like a general surveying a battlefield. Well, damn, he muttered. They really did build a city on your land. I nodded. Can you stop them? He was quiet for a moment, then said, legally? Yes, but it won't be fast. They've greased the wheels. County records are a mess. I'll need to prove fraud, maybe even bribery, if we want to bury them. Then do it, I said. He looked at me, serious now. It's going to cost, Danny. HOA has deep pockets. They'll drag this through appeals, countersuits, everything. You sure you're ready for a fight this big? I thought about my father's words, about every memory rooted in that soil. Then I met Mark's gaze. I'm not just ready. I'm not giving up. The fight began with paper. Mark filed injunctions, demanding construction stop immediately. Karen, of course, ignored them. Within days, she had lawyers sending counterclaims, arguing I'd abandoned the land, that the HOA had rights through some twisted interpretation of eminent domain. I wasn't just battling Karen anymore. I was battling a machine. One evening, I drove past the site to find her standing on the foundation of what would soon be the HOA clubhouse. She was in her pearls and blazer again, clipboard in hand, surrounded by men hanging on her every word. I pulled over, got out, and shouted across the lot. Karen, you're building houses on land that doesn't belong to you. She smiled like a cat playing with a mouse. Oh, Daniel, still clinging to your little papers? You really should let go. Progress is unstoppable. I marched closer, my boots sinking into the fresh dirt. You're stealing from me, from my family, and I'm not going to stop until every last one of those houses is torn down. She tilted her head, almost pitying. You poor man. Do you really think anyone's going to side with you over 100 new families looking for homes? Over the county's shiny new tax base? Face it, you're the past. I'm the future. For a moment, anger almost got the better of me. But instead, I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. Enjoy it while it lasts, I said. Because every nail you drive into this ground is going to cost you more than you can imagine. For the first time, I saw her smirk falter. Back home, I worked side by side with Mark, gathering every shred of evidence. Old maps showing the Harris boundary line. Tax receipts proving we'd never once abandoned the property. Even aerial photos my dad had taken back in the 70s that showed the land untouched. But it wasn't enough. Karen's lawyers were good. Too good. They filed motions to delay, motions to dismiss, anything to slow us down while the houses kept rising. By the end of the month, 25 homes stood finished, their roofs gleaming in the sun. Families were already touring models, smiling as if they weren't walking on stolen ground. The frustration ate at me, but so did fear. What if Karen was right? What if no one cared about deeds and history anymore? What if money and politics could erase 100 years of Harris sweat and sacrifice? I found myself sitting at the creek one night, the sound of frogs and crickets mixing with the distant hum of generators from the construction site. Duke rested his head on my knee as I whispered, "I don't know if I can win this, Dad." The stars reflected in the water, and for a fleeting second, I swear I heard his voice in the rustle of the trees. "Hold the land, Daniel. Hold it." That was when I knew I couldn't just fight on paper. I had to fight on the ground, too. And so, I began planning something Karen would never see coming. The first crack in Karen's empire came on a Wednesday morning, right after dawn. I'd been up since 4, loading my truck with tools, files, and an old video camera my brother had left me. Mark had warned me, the courtroom is won by evidence, Danny, not by passion. So I figured, fine. I'd bring them evidence they couldn't ignore. I drove down to the edge of the development where the so-called model homes had popped up like mushrooms after rain. My stomach twisted seeing strangers wander around my land, sipping coffee and smiling at the future Karen had promised them. None of them had the faintest idea they were standing on stolen soil. I parked near the creek and walked straight up to one of the surveyors hammering a stake into the ground. "Morning," I said, my voice steady. "Mind telling me who authorized you to dig here?" The guy glanced at his clipboard, shrugged. "HOA board. Karen McMillan." I lifted my camera. "Say that again, please." "For the record." He frowned. HOA board." Click. The camera whirred as I zoomed in on the stake, the survey lines, the work truck with the HOA logo stenciled on the side. Proof. The man cursed under his breath, but I didn't care. Every interaction, every confession, every tiny slip, they all went on tape. By noon, I had footage of workers crossing my property line without permission, trucks dumping gravel right onto Harris land, even Karen herself directing them. When she spotted me filming, her eyes narrowed. She strode over in heels that sunk slightly in the dirt, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "Daniel," she said through a smile stretched too tight. "How adorable. Playing reporter now?" "Not playing," I said. "Gathering proof. Every inch you build, every order you give, I'm documenting it. Judges love evidence, Karen." For the first time, her eyes flickered with something I hadn't seen before, irritation. "Do whatever you like," she snapped. "You won't stop progress." "Maybe not today," I said, lowering the camera. "But soon." That weekend, Mark filed for an emergency injunction, this time armed with my footage. The courthouse buzzed with whispers as locals filled the gallery, curious about the man taking on an HOA giant. Karen showed up flanked by a team of lawyers in suits so sharp they could cut glass. She wore pearls again, her armor. When the judge asked if I had anything to present, I stood, heart pounding, and set the camera on the evidence table. The courtroom went quiet as the footage played, workers openly admitting they were under HOA orders, Karen pointing at survey lines, trucks trespassing deep into my land. When it ended, the judge leaned back in his chair, brow furrowed. "Mrs. McMillan," he said, his voice even, "this footage shows clear trespass. How do you explain this?" Karen gave a smile so practiced it could have won awards. "Your Honor, we had every reason to believe this land was part of our permitted development. If Mr. Harris believes otherwise, that's a matter for civil court. My board acted in good faith." I clenched my fists. Good faith. The words burned like acid. The judge sighed. "Mr. Harris, while this evidence is compelling, property disputes of this scale take time. I can't shut down construction today, but I will grant a temporary hold on any new permits until we sort this out." It wasn't the victory I wanted, but it was a crack, and cracks spread. Karen, however, didn't take kindly to being slowed down. The next week, I found tire tracks cutting across my driveway. Mail missing from my box. One night, Duke barked until I stepped outside with a flashlight and found a dead raccoon nailed to my fence post. Karen was sending me a message. I took photos, filed reports, but the sheriff's deputies just shook their heads. Could be kids. Could be coincidence. Coincidence, my ass. The fear was real, though. I started keeping a shotgun propped by the door, triple-checking locks at night. The thought that she might come after me, not just my land, gnawed at me. One night, sitting in the kitchen with only the hum of the fridge for company, I asked myself, how far was I willing to go? The answer came the next morning when I drove past the site and saw them pouring the foundation for house number 50. 50, halfway to her dream of 101 homes. Something inside me snapped. That evening, I gathered what I needed: floodlights, chains, heavy-duty locks, and a dozen wooden signs I painted by hand in bold black letters. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. With Duke at my side, I drove out under the cover of night. The moon was bright, but the construction site was deserted. Just the skeletons of houses creaking in the wind. I planted the signs at every entrance, chained the gates shut, padlocked the access roads. Then I set up floodlights, pointing them at the half-built homes, a beacon to anyone who dared trespass. By dawn, the place looked less like a development and more like a fortress. When the workers arrived, confusion spread like wildfire. Trucks backed up along the road, men scratching their heads, muttering. Then Karen arrived. Her Lexus screeched to a halt, and she stormed out, heels clicking furiously. "What the hell is this?" she demanded. "Protection," I said calmly, sipping coffee from a thermos. "My land, my right to defend it. You come through those gates now. It's trespassing." Her face reddened. "You can't do this. You're interfering with a lawful development." "Lawful?" I laughed. "The judge said no new permits. That means your little empire's frozen. And until this court decides, no one lays another brick here." She looked like she might explode. Her lawyers pulled her aside, whispering frantically, but I could see the rage boiling in her eyes. For the first time, I realized I had her cornered. But cornered animals are dangerous. 2 nights later, I woke to Duke growling at the door. The floodlights outside had gone dark. My gut clenched. I grabbed the shotgun and stepped onto the porch. In the distance, I saw shadows moving near the construction site. Figures slipping between the half-built houses, flashlights bobbing. Sabotage. I hurried toward the noise, heart hammering. When I rounded the corner, I saw them. 3 men in hoodies, smashing padlocks with crowbars, cutting chains. "Hey," I shouted, pumping the shotgun. "Step away from my property." They froze. One of them cursed. Then they bolted into the darkness. I chased, but they vanished into the woods. When I returned, my chains were broken, my signs torn down, the floodlights smashed. Karen had sent her thugs. She wanted me scared, wanted me broken. Instead, she lit a fire in me I didn't know I had. I stood there in the wreckage of my defenses, shotgun clutched tight, and swore under my breath. This ends now. No more warnings. No more waiting. She's not just stealing land. She's waging war. And I'm going to fight back with everything I've got. And that was the night I began planning the move that would change everything. The move that would bring her whole empire crashing down. By the time fall rolled in, the air was sharp with the smell of sawdust and asphalt. Karen's empire of houses had ballooned to nearly 80. Their siding painted neat pastel colors. Driveways poured smooth as glass. Families toured the models with wide eyes. Children running barefoot through yards that weren't theirs to play in. But what no one realized, what Karen had never bothered to check, was that every inch of those homes, every nail hammered, every fence post planted, was mine. Legally, indisputably mine. And I was done playing defense. Mark and I worked in secret, burning midnight oil at my kitchen table. The more we dug, the worse it looked for Karen. Bribed county officials. Forged documents. Permits approved without signatures. She hadn't just cut corners. She'd bulldozed through the law like it was paper. The final straw came when Mark slammed a file shut and said, "Danny, you're sitting on a gold mine." I frowned. "How you figure?" Because not only do you own the land, by law, you own every improvement built on it. Every stick of lumber, every roof, every damn driveway. Those houses, they belong to you. I blinked, the weight of his words sinking in. You mean? I mean, he interrupted, she's been building your neighborhood. The room went quiet except for Duke's tail thumping against the floor. For the first time in months, I felt something other than anger. I felt power. We filed the lawsuit within the week. Property rights, fraud, trespass, damages, the works. Word spread fast. By the time the first hearing rolled around, the courthouse was packed wall to wall. Farmers, locals, even some of the new homebuyers curious to see what the hell was going on. Karen strutted in with her pearls gleaming, flanked by lawyers stacked 3 deep. She gave me a smile that said, "You don't scare me." But when Mark laid out the evidence, deeds, maps, aerial photos, video footage, and now a stack of county emails exposing bribery, her smile cracked. Then came the bombshell. "Your Honor," Mark said, pacing like a preacher, "not only has the defendant unlawfully built on Mr. Harris's property, but by law of fixtures and improvements, those houses, every single one of them, legally belong to Mr. Harris. He is the sole owner of Madison Springs." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, murmurs, people craning their necks to see Karen's face. She shot to her feet, screeching, "That's absurd. Those homes are mine. We sold them, we." The judge banged the gavel. "Sit down, Mrs. McMillan." I'll never forget the look on her face as the judge turned to me. "Mr. Harris, as of this ruling, you are recognized as the lawful owner of the land and all structures built upon it. Mrs. McMillan and her HOA are hereby ordered to cease operations immediately." It was like the air rushed out of the room. My knees almost gave way. After months of hell, of doubt, of watching my land swallowed piece by piece, justice had landed squarely on my side. But Karen wasn't done. Not yet. She stormed up to me outside the courthouse, her face blotchy with rage. "You think this is over? You think you can take what's mine?" I met her eyes, steady as stone. "It was never yours, Karen. You built 101 houses on land you didn't own. Now they're mine. Every inch, every brick, every blade of grass." Her voice cracked. "You'll regret this." I leaned closer. "No, you will." The weeks that followed were surreal. Families who'd bought into Karen's dream were stunned when they learned their new homes legally belonged to me. Some begged, some offered to buy. Others cursed my name, calling me greedy, heartless. But I wasn't heartless. I remembered what this land meant, what it had cost my family to hold on to it. So I made a choice. I sold half the homes, fair market value, no scams, no tricks. Enough to make sure I'd never worry about money again. Enough to restore the farm and set aside land for future generations. The other half, I kept, rented some out, gave a few to veterans who needed housing, even donated one to the local fire department for training. And at the center of it all, where Karen had dreamed of her shiny HOA clubhouse, I built something different, a community center. No HOA board, no fines for mailbox colors, no Karens with clipboards, just a place where people could gather, free and welcome. One crisp November evening, I sat on my porch, Duke at my feet, watching the sunset over what had once been fields and was now a patchwork of homes, homes that belonged to me. Mark joined me with a beer in hand, clinking bottles together. "So, Danny, you ever think you'd end up the owner of an entire neighborhood?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "Not in a million years. I just wanted to protect my father's land." "And now?" he asked. I took a deep breath, watching the horizon glow. "Now I think Dad was right. You hold on to land. You hold on to freedom. But maybe you also hold on to responsibility. To make sure nobody like Karen ever does this again." Mark raised his bottle. "To Harrisland. And to never underestimating you again." We drank, the sound of crickets rising with the twilight. And somewhere out there, beyond the fading light, I knew Karen was still seething, still plotting. But it didn't matter. She had built her empire on my soil, and in the end, it was me who owned it all. The land, the houses, the victory, and I intended to keep every inch. If you enjoyed this intense story, smash that like button and subscribe for more gripping, cinematic tales. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next thriller. Your support keeps these stories coming.